Caitlin Clark came out in the second half looking ready to take over, knocking down her first three-pointer after halftime and bringing energy back into the building. You could see the emotion immediately with the fist bump and the intensity on her face. But even with those flashes, this season opener left a lot of Indiana Fever fans frustrated. Welcome back to Basketball Fan, because after watching this game, one thing became very clear: this did not look like a championship-level team. Yes, there were exciting moments throughout the game. Caitlin Clark showed her playmaking ability, pushing the pace, creating shots for teammates, and trying to keep the offense alive whenever things slowed down. She finished with 20 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds, which looks impressive on paper. But when you look deeper, the shooting struggles are still there. Clark went just 2 of 9 from beyond the arc, and at times her shot simply did not look comfortable. There were possessions where she looked aggressive and confident, but there were also long stretches where the offense completely stalled and the Fever had no answers. Kelsey Mitchell did her job offensively with 30 points, while Aliyah Boston added 23 points on efficient shooting. Your top 3 stars combined for over 70 points at home, and somehow the team still lost. That is the biggest concern coming out of this game. If Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aliyah Boston are all producing at that level, Indiana should be winning games like this comfortably. Instead, they lost to a Dallas Wings team that struggled heavily last season. That is not the kind of performance fans expected from a team being talked about as a serious contender. The defense was another major issue. Stephanie White was brought back with the expectation that she would completely transform the culture and make this team tougher defensively. All off-season, fans heard about how her system would elevate the Fever. But in the very first game, Indiana gave up 107 points on their home floor. That simply cannot happen if this team wants to compete for a title. Paige Bueckers looked like the only true superstar-level player Dallas had on the floor, yet Indiana still had no answer defensively. Rotations were slow, transition defense was inconsistent, and the overall energy on that side of the court just was not good enough. Lexi Hull struggled badly throughout the game and looked overwhelmed on both ends. Offensively, she could not find rhythm, and defensively there were several possessions where Dallas attacked her directly. Meanwhile, the Misha Hines-Allen signing continues to raise questions. Even during the off-season, many fans were unsure about the move, and after this performance those concerns only grew louder. There were moments where it genuinely felt like the Fever bench could not provide anything positive consistently. One of the few bright spots was Mikayla Timpson, who brought immediate energy off the bench. She scored 11 points in just 19 minutes while shooting 5 of 6 from the field. She looked active around the basket, played hard, and gave the Fever some much-needed hustle plays. DeWanna Bonner also gave solid offensive minutes with 7 points in limited action. At least a couple of players looked prepared to contribute, but overall the second unit still feels like a major weakness for this roster. Raven Johnson failed to make a strong impact, and Sophie Cunningham scoring only 3 points is not nearly enough production from a veteran expected to help stabilize the team. Even with a few rebounds and assists, the lack of scoring depth remains obvious. All off-season people talked about Indiana's lack of length, weak bench production, and limited second-unit scoring. After just one game, every single one of those concerns still looks very real. Then came the moment that had fans seriously worried. Reports showed Caitlin Clark back on the bench with a heating pad around her lower back late in the game. Soon after, she headed to the locker room to begin the fourth quarter, and immediately social media exploded with concern. Nobody knows exactly what is going on yet, but after everything Clark dealt with physically last season, fans are understandably nervous. Questions started spreading everywhere. Is the groin issue back? Is there something wrong with her back? Fever fans and even major personalities like Dave Portnoy were reacting in real time because when Caitlin Clark's health becomes a question, the entire basketball world pays attention. Despite all the concerns, Clark still managed to make history once again. She officially became the 6th fastest player in WNBA history to reach 1,000 career points and the fastest point guard ever to accomplish that feat. She also became the fastest player in league history to record 1,000 points. 250 rebounds, and 250 assists. Those numbers are absolutely incredible and continue to prove just how special she really is. Even during a frustrating night for the Fever, Caitlin Clark still reminded everyone why she is considered one of the most generational talents the league has ever seen. For Indiana, though, one thing is clear after this opener. Talent alone is not enough. If this team wants to live up to the championship expectations surrounding them, they need better defense, stronger bench production, and far more consistency around Caitlin Clark. Otherwise, all the hype in the world will not matter once the season really gets going. Make sure to subscribe to Basketball Fan for more Fever news, Caitlin Clark updates, WNBA reactions, and all the latest basketball coverage. Caitlin Clark spoke after the game and tried to stay positive despite the disappointing loss. She admitted that she started a little slow, saying the nerves and anxiety of opening night probably played a role early on. But overall, she said she felt good physically and believed she was only a few shots away from putting together a really strong performance that could have helped Indiana pull out the win. Clark explained that the offense is not the main concern right now because the Fever can clearly score the basketball. She even mentioned there are still many areas where the offense can improve, but she also gave credit to Dallas for shooting the ball extremely well throughout the game. According to Clark, the only quarter where Indiana truly looked like themselves was the third quarter when they finally started finding rhythm on both ends of the floor. She also pointed out that the fourth quarter became messy because of all the fouling late in the game. Still, Clark said the locker room remained positive afterward and stressed that nobody is hanging their heads after only one game. She reminded everyone that this is just one out of 44 games and there is still a long season ahead. But after watching the game, there is definitely a strange feeling surrounding this Indiana Fever team right now. And here on Basketball Fan, we have to be honest about it. A lot of the same concerns fans talked about all offseason showed up immediately in Game 1. The bench looked shaky, the depth looked questionable, and the lack of size and length was impossible to ignore at several points during the game. That is why people are already beginning to ask tough questions about Stephanie White. All offseason, fans kept hearing that White was going to completely transform this team defensively and change the culture. The expectations were sky high. But then Dallas came into Indiana and looked extremely comfortable offensively. Paige Bueckers played with confidence, and Eric Ogunbowale dropped 22 points shortly after returning from playing overseas in China. Meanwhile, Indiana lost at home to a team that won only 10 games last season. That simply cannot happen if this Fever team is supposed to be a legitimate championship contender. Home games matter in a long season, and this felt like one Indiana absolutely needed to win, especially considering how productive the star players were offensively. Caitlin Clark finished with 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists. Kelsey Mitchell exploded offensively once again, and Aliyah Boston also delivered a strong performance. Normally, when your big three puts up numbers like that, you expect a comfortable victory, maybe even a double-digit win. Instead, Indiana walked away 0-1, and that is where the frustration really starts to grow. Before the season began, there were people predicting the Fever would start the year 9-0 or even 10-0. Honestly, after watching this roster closely, that never felt realistic. When you compare Indiana to a team like the New York Liberty, the difference in overall roster depth and consistency is obvious. Watching the Liberty play right now compared to Indiana feels like watching two teams on completely different levels. If these teams faced each other today, it could get ugly very quickly. The Fever still have talent, no question about it, but there is clearly still a major gap when it comes to depth, defense, and consistency. There are definitely winnable games on Indiana's schedule this season, but effort and execution matter more than ever in today's WNBA. Teams like Dallas and Toronto are not just showing up to lose anymore. These teams are competing hard every single night, and that is exactly why this loss matters so much. If someone told fans before the game that Caitlin Clark would finish with 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists, most people would have assumed Indiana wins comfortably. Instead, the Fever still lost, and that outcome highlights the deeper issues surrounding this roster. At the end of the day, Criticism is completely fair when the same weaknesses continue showing up over and over again. Fans can keep saying, trust the process, but Indiana has to start proving things on the court. Right now, the concerns about the bench, defensive consistency, and roster depth all look very real after just one game. That is the stone-cold truth with no sugarcoating. Thanks for watching Basketball Fan. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Caitlin Clark updates, Indiana Fever coverage, WNBA news, and basketball content every single week.